All right. Welcome to this week's edition of the 10X Business Owners Mastermind Group call on the channel. John Pyron, the business doctor, here live with Chris Middleton and Tyler Buechler with Make Taxes Fair LLC.
Make Taxes Fair.
Oh, Make Taxes Fair LLC. Okay. So because we're live, I can't go back and redo that. So it just goes to show you, you don't have to be an expert to make this happen. So, but the way, if you're looking at my screen, it says it all. You're wasting money on taxes. And what was the quote that you guys are famous for?
We say friends don't let friends overpay the government.
Exactly. Exactly. So, well, welcome, guys. I'm glad that we had this opportunity. It's been a long time of coming, and it's one of the topics that's near and dear to my heart as a small business owner. I've been building companies now 33 years, and I've paid lots of taxes, and I have saved a lot in taxes. And really, what led us to even have a conversation is I had been working with a guy for well over 20 years who, in my opinion, at the time was like the Jedi Master ninja at taxes, tax strategy, that sort of thing. But one of the biggest business tips I've learned is you're going to be 5 years from now will be determined by three things. Number one, the books you read. Number two, the audios that you listen to or the videos that you watch. And more importantly, the people that you associated with. And the guy, for those of you that don't know my background, I mean, I have a very dark past. It's I was not always a good guy. Okay, let's just say it that way. And so when I decided to give my heart to the Lord and really follow God's ways and really just be able to look myself in the mirror, knowing that, hey, I'm real, I'm authentic, I'm not plain Christian, I'm not checking the box, I'm not doing any of that stuff. I actually want a real heartfelt warm relationship directly with Jesus. And so what that led me to do is walk away from that life that I had. And one of them was the tax strategist that I used to hang out with all the time, and he was still involved in clubbing and all the stuff. And I'm like, and so I've dealt with probably two or three different tax professionals in the last 5 years, but just had not been able to find somebody like you guys. Somebody that can't, it's not just, hey, I can prepare a tax return.
Mhm.
I could do your S corp, your LLC, your C corp. I could do your tax return. Okay,
Right.
lots and lots of people could do tax returns. What I understood a long time ago in business is there are strategies, and I don't know about now, but at the time there's 40,000 pages of the tax code, which is why some of these large corporations have teams of tax attorneys because there are loopholes that exist out there. It doesn't matter if you're Tesla or if you're Joe Smith that just started a company. The tax advantages are still there for the small guy.
Right.
And so when you and I met and Adrian Boycell introduced us, and then I got an opportunity to meet your partner Tyler here, um, and we're going after the same small business owner, just getting started to one, two, three, four, $5 million in revenue, and they're overpaying their taxes. I need somebody like you on my team. And so as we've gotten to know one another, I'll just go out on the limb right now in the very beginning of this to say, you guys are now going to be my go-to recommended referral tax strategist for any business owner I ever deal with going forward. You guys have integrity, in my opinion. You guys are great partners, and you guys do the right thing. And what really helped me, I'm not just saying that with fluff, is you and I were at Adrian's daughter's birthday party.
Right.
And there was a strategy that I've been sharing with clients for years, even my own strategy. And it's like, hey, you form a corporation, transfer all your assets to the corporation, and now the corporation has those assets, and you can get paid in vet. And you're like, whoa, 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 dude, it's not a one size fits all. And you really changed my mind around that strategy, and so that gained a lot of respect from me. Just so we're clear, and that's why I wanted to interview you guys. So without further to do, let's kind of dive into this. So this is Chris Middleton and Tyler Buechler. And how long have you guys been in business together as partners?
Coming up on almost 2 years.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
So why
we've
don't we
been
do this? Let's go one at a time. And if you guys can briefly introduce yourselves, tell us about your backgrounds and your expertise in tax strategy.
age before beauty, Tyler. Go ahead.
Yeah, appreciate that. Thanks, Chris. That's so generous of you. All right, I'll kick it off. So yeah, John, appreciate that very much. As he said, my name is Tyler Buechler, and I myself actually, so to tell the story, the way Chris and I became partners and the way that we actually got together is I myself have a background in entrepreneurism. So I've grown and started businesses in the past, and my expertise and history is actually in the payments processing industry. So I previously had some business partners and I grew multiple companies doing credit card processing for businesses. We did everything from credit card processing and gift cards and ACH to point of sale systems, web development with e-commerce shopping cart integrations, and we had a software team and we built a software platform for IT companies to be able to automate payments from their clients as well. So that's really where my expertise was in the past. When I met Chris, I was exiting some of those companies. And throughout my career, my partners and I, we'd been very aggressive about trying to find such tax strategists. We wanted to be cutting edge. We wanted to save every tax dollar that we legally possibly could. And so we employed companies from all over the country to do this kind of thing for us. And when I exited these companies was about the time that I met Chris. And somewhat of a similar scenario as to like what you talked about. I thought I knew quite a bit. I met Chris and he just blew my mind. He started talking about how to use some of the strategies that I had used in the past, but with jet fuel, making them 2 to 3 times as effective as what I was. And then some new strategies I'd never heard of. And we thought that we were pretty well versed. I thought, I'd found quite a bit of the experts out there, knew what was going on in the tax world. And Chris really enlightened me. And it impressed me so that I said, hey, let's get together. Let's do something with this because I'm exiting. I'm looking for something new. I love working with businesses, entrepreneur myself. This is amazing. We have so much good that we can do. Literally taking the money that hardworking Americans are busting their butts for, keeping it in your pocket where you can use that to invest, take care of your family, take a well-deserved trip, whatever it is, rather than just give it to the government because nobody knows how to actually use these strategies. You just check a form and they say, this is what you pay us. It can be done much better than that. So I'm more of a professional taxpayer, being a business owner in the past myself,
Sure.
but I bring the business acumen, growing the
Yeah.
organization, putting the systems in place. And so my role is more of an operations and communications and connections type of role. Whereas Chris, with his nearly 20 years of experience now in the industry, he is the one that really knows the industry and knows the subject matter. And so that's how our engagement kind of marries together and how we bring to the table building an organization that knows these strategies and then from my expertise knows how to grow the organization and do it the right way to really serve the client and give them exactly what they need.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Chris,
Yeah.
same
And I
question to
mean,
you, man.
yeah. So to build off of actually, John, what you said and what Tyler said, I've been doing taxes for almost 20 years. Can't believe I'm that old, right? I can look back and say, oh, 20 years ago. Oof, ouch. But to echo what you said, John, at the beginning, you worked with in the past and you found somebody that was, a tax strategist, tax mind, future thinking type person. And those are rare in the accounting space, right? And I say the accounting model is broken. And why it's broken is most accountants, CPAs, enrolled agents, tax professionals are what I would call happy historians, right?
Mm-hmm.
You take your information to them, they put that information in the right boxes. That's important. You need to be compliant. I say just because the government lies, cheats, and steals doesn't mean we can or should, right? So we have to do things the right way. But where the disconnect is most tax professionals don't look at your scenario and say, hey, to change, you could capture this one tax strategy. You're already doing steps 1, 2, and 3. If we
Mm-hmm.
just get you to modify your behavior a little bit and do that one extra step, that could capture potentially a huge tax write-off. So one little nugget, if you're tuning in today or watching this replay, thank you for your time because you're here and this is valuable. So let me give you something of value. John, did you know that websites need to be ADA compliant for business owners?
Absolutely.
Okay. Did you know that there's a tax credit available if you make your virtual space ADA compliant?
You know what? There's a client of mine that does this work, and he told me about this, and I was like, wow, I didn't know that. So,
Right.
how does that work? Because there's a lot of people going to be listening that are listening to this live, and a lot of
Yeah.
people going to listen to the recording. What is the code on that, and how can they take advantage of that?
So if you're not already taking notes, pull out your pen, pencil, note-taking device, because this is worth showing up today, right now, could be worth up to $5,000 for you. So ADA compliance in 1990, the Disability Americans with Disability Act was updated, I believe, in 1990 to include the virtual space, right? And the virtual space has only evolved since then. Most people, when they think of ADA compliance, they think of, oh, a wheelchair ramp or bathroom access and different things. That's important. So if you're spending money on improvements in your business in the physical space, that can qualify you. But almost every business owner on the planet has a website, does email marketing. We're becoming more and more virtual as we become more global. So if you're investing in ADA compliance, meaning you pay a web developer to create a website that is ADA compliant. That could mean color, like if I'm colorblind or hearing impaired, there are plugins that on my device, whatever, my phone or laptop, whatever it is, that communicate with the website to make that content deliverable to me. So where the form, this is actually called the Disabled Access Tax Credit. And to qualify for the credit, you do have to invest in improvements, right? You can't just say, oh, I'm spending money on websites, so I'm good. It has to be qualified improvements for ADA compliance to make it compliant or to maintain that compliance, right? So improvements and maintenance of those improvements. So we onboarded a new client. He actually does some web stuff for people. So he knew about this. And he's like, oh, well, we dissected his situation. He's paying a internal employee and he's paying about $3,000 a month and part-time for him. And she spends maybe 15 to 20% of her day or of her week pushing content out for him, pushing out blog posts, email marketing, all those things. It's like, bro, as long as we're doing that in an ADA compliant way, some of what you spend on her can help us achieve that, fill up that bucket of dollars spent on ADA compliance. The maximum of that $5,000 credit is achieved when you hit $10,250 of ADA compliance spending. So the first $250 doesn't count. I don't know why. The Congress critters got together and made up their rules and they put a $250 haircut on there. Cool. But the next 10,000, you get 50% of that next 10,000 of ADA compliance investing.
So let me get this straight. So I'm a small business owner.
Right.
Okay. And my experience in dealing with web designers, okay, is I go to a new web designer and they're like, I don't really want to touch that site. I didn't put it together.
Right.
Okay. So what we need to do, and this is what most of them recommend, you know what we need to do, John? We need to build you a new site. Okay.
Right.
And because your existing site is not ADA compliant, or even if it is, there's a bunch of improvements we need to make to your existing site. But because I wasn't your web designer, we need to start from scratch. And I go, you know what? That's a great idea. Let's go for it. So now what I'm hearing you say is I pretty much, because I need to have my site updated to become ADA compliant, which is going to require them to rebuild the site. Half of the cost of associated with that can be deducted potentially.
not deducted, but received as a credit.
received as
So
a credit.
yeah.
There
And
you
do you
go.
know the difference between a credit and a deduction? Is that
Uh,
so?
for our listeners, explain that.
So a deduction, let's say you make 100 grand and you have a $10,000 deduction. So
Mhm.
that just knocks 10 grand. It's your expenses, right? That knocks 10
Sure.
grand off of your
Mhm.
income. So you pay tax on 90,000 instead of 100,000.
Correct.
A credit, if you have a $5,000 credit, let's say you pay tax on the 100 grand, and let's assume a 10%, I wish a flat tax, but a 10% tax bracket. So if your tax bill is $10,000, you owe $10,000 in
Mhm.
taxes. That credit acts as a payment towards your
Credit.
tax bill, reducing your taxes. So if you tell me, Chris, do you want a credit or a deduction? I say a credit 7 days a week and twice on Sundays. That's
Yeah.
credits are incredibly valued because they're a
Mhm.
dollar for dollar value of taxes.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like this one guy, probably about 10, 15 years ago, came to me and I was doing sales training at the time. And so I said, okay, give me your pitch. And he was selling high-end technology solutions to small businesses. And one of the things that was his angle is, hey, you're Mr. Client, Mr. or Mrs. Client, you're going to spend $55,000 to upgrade your network. Guess what? It's a write-off. And I'm like, dude, stop saying that. Okay. Because yeah, some small business owners that haven't been around for a while, that sounds exciting. For somebody like me that's been around for a while, I don't give a rip if it's a tax write-off. Okay. I still have to pay the damn money
Right.
to hopefully get the write-off. So
Well,
that's the big difference between a write-off and a credit.
right. And I tell people, I say, if you need, right, is it a legitimate need? Because I bump into people where they're like, yeah, I mean, I have a website, but I spend like $500 a year on it. It's not a marketing machine for me, right? It
Mm-mm.
doesn't generate business. People aren't finding me through my website. I'm like, okay, if that's not where you want to take your business, if that's
Mm-hmm.
not something you're going to invest in anyway,
Mm-hmm.
never do things just for the tax impact, right? To
Mm-hmm.
your point, don't
Yeah.
spend 50 grand so you can save 30 cents on the dollar in taxes.
Yeah.
Make sure that you're being not frugal, but judicious about where you spend your money, and make sure
Mm-hmm.
that there's that ROI coming back to you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this question. Probably one of the most important questions that small business owners usually have is what how do I want to word this? It's like, what are some of the common tax mistakes that small
Yeah.
business owners you know will make? And then really it's all relative to revenue, I would imagine. But what are some of the common mistakes that you see when you take on a new client?
Well, I hear people tell me all the time, oh, I heard about that. I did, I checked that out. So to our point about this tax credit right here, that's potentially $5,000 every year.
Hmm.
So the lack of action, right? We get into the doom scrolling on our phones and we come across really cool stuff. We're like, oh, that's dope. But then you never do anything with it. So our entire model around maketaxesfair.com is to educate. We call it the 4 E's: educate, evaluate. So if you learn something, how does that something apply to you? Now you're primed for execution. So
Hmm.
if you know something and you know how it applies to your fact pattern, now you say, okay, I need to do something with that. So now let's take that and put it into motion. And then once we do that, educate with the evaluation component education, now we're primed to achieve efficiency.
Hmm.
But unless we take action, and I think that goes along with the 10X, it's like you can talk about it all day, but those are real dollars going out the door. And if you
Hmm.
could give yourself a raise of 20 to 30% by
Hmm.
cutting your tax bill by that much, who wouldn't do that, right? But it takes the work. So there's nothing replaces that hard, boring work. There is no magic bullet when it comes to your anything really in life, building your business, getting trimmer, right? Losing weight,
Sure.
cutting the fat in your tax bill, all that.
Chris, what was that? What was that saying that you said you liked so much? The magic you're looking for.
Oh,
Was that?
yeah, the magic you're looking for is in the work you're avoiding,
Yeah.
right? If
So
you
let me ask this question, because in kind of a real world scenario, it's like I have a client of mine who owns a business. Okay, I'm not going to go into what type. Um, they're 15 years old and they do close to $2 million in revenue. The owner literally never got the opportunity to go to high school. Okay. In my case, I've owned several multi-million dollar companies that I built from scratch. Dropped out of high school in the 11th grade, drug addict, homeless by the time I was 17. So, and I've coached all kinds of business owners, college grads, from whatever. So let's just say, here I am. I'm a business owner. Okay, let me put this into real world scenario here. Let's just say I have done $100,000 in revenue. Okay.
okay,
And so, what are the different ways taxes get dealt with if I'm a sole prop, an LLC, an S corp, or a C corp? Given everything is equal, okay, I am $100,000 in revenue. I've got no employees, or maybe I have one.
okay.
Okay, how are taxes handled differently? I think that is a huge question, because most small business owners, like my client, he had no clue about taxes.
So I need to ask a clarifying question. And for the record, anybody watching, John did not tee this up for me in advance. So
No, I
we're
did not.
raw and unfiltered, right? This is
We
great.
are raw and unfiltered on this question.
So is that 100 grand net after expenses when you say 100 revenue, or is it 100,000 gross?
Very well answered. Okay. So for those of you that are brand new business owners, okay, the importance of what Chris just said is, just because somebody makes 100 grand in business doesn't mean they get to keep 100 grand. Okay. So let's just say the person does 250,000 in revenue and they're a net.
Got it.
Okay.
Got it.
Their EBITDA, earnings before taxes, depreciation, and amortization, is 100 grand.
Good. So step one, I always say step one, and to be honest, we don't work with people that don't have their numbers together, because step one is knowing what numbers your actual numbers are. I had somebody come to me and they're like, I made $1 million. I'm like, cool. We looked at it and I'm like, yeah, bro, you made like 50 grand. So
I know.
you made $1 million, but you spent
Yeah.
950,000
Yeah.
to
Hey,
get
but it
that.
sounds great at a party, dude. It
Sounds great.
sounds great at
Yeah.
a networking event. It
Yeah.
sounds great when I'm talking to my relatives at Thanksgiving and Christmas. Man, I did $1 million last year.
Right.
And then you look at, oh crap, I didn't keep much at all.
Right. And some of that goes out for, we just purchased laptop and
Yeah.
a new monitor. I mean, today
Sure.
for Tyler, he needed to upgrade the laptop. So, that's an expense to whittle down at that, 250,000. So the answer
So let
is,
me re-ask the question this way then. Okay.
yeah,
250 grand in revenue. I've had a professional bookkeeper all year long. Okay. I've had a CPA account for it, twice this year. The numbers are 100% accurate.
perfect.
Okay.
So,
And I have 100 grand in EBITDA at this stage if I run a cash based accounting P&L.
okay. So if you're at this point, I'm assuming you're not an S corp, you're not an LLC.
I'm saying, what would the
Right.
tax implications be on all four types of
I
businesses?
gotcha. Okay. I'll do my best to answer this in the limited time we have. So,
Sure.
C Corp, if you're a C corporation, your C corporation is taxed twice. You're taxed a flat, currently it's a 21% flat tax at the federal level. The states vary for their tax rates, but you're paying on that $100,000 of profit, you're paying taxes on the corporate profit.
Mhm.
Then if you pull money out, so you say, hey, I'm going to take money out in the form of a dividend, you're then taxed on a dividend at the individual level. You're also taxed if the corporation issues you a W-2 as a wage that I'm going to assume that of that 250,000, your wages, maybe you paid yourself 50 grand, that was part of that. So you're also taxed on the W-2 wages you took out from the corporation, right?
Mhm.
With an LLC, and fun fact, there is no such thing as an S corporation on a legal basis. And I'm not an attorney. I don't play one on Zoom or TV, but there's C corporations and LLCs. And then you make the S election. So LLCs and Schedule C, sole proprietor, are actually taxed the same way. The LLC is a slightly different in that it flows the income or passes the income over from the LLC tax return to you personally.
Mhm.
But effectively, an LLC and a sole proprietor are taxed the same way. If you're single and no kids and have $100,000 profit, you're going to pay Social Security and Medicare tax, or that lovely self-employment tax
Mhm.
that many of us who have been self-employed are like, what the F is this? That's the Social Security. We're paying into the world's biggest Ponzi scheme, right?
Yeah.
We're supporting all the people that are on the Social Security Medicare system. And that's 15.3% of your tax, right? That's a 15.3% tax. So your tax bill just from Social Security and Medicare is going to be, there's a little bit of an adjustment, but about 13 to 14 grand on that, plus your regular income tax, which if you're single, 100 grand, you're probably looking at another 10 to 12. So you're probably looking at about 24 to $26,000 taxes on $100,000 just federal.
And that's just federal.
federal.
That's just the federal level.
Yeah. So assume about 25, 26% taxes just on the federal, plus your state, if you're lucky enough to live in a state like California, where you have income tax.
Yeah.
An S corporation is unique in the sense that you're not taxed at the corporate level, and there's no Social Security and Medicare tax on that net profit of the corporation.
Mhm.
So you save yourself potentially a chunk of change in the Social Security and Medicare taxes or FICA. However, there's a requirement to pay yourself a reasonable salary, right? The IRS says, hey, you're dodging the bullet on that Social Security and Medicare tax. So, oh, wait, we need people to support the system. So that's why they impose the reasonable compensation requirement on the S Corp owners.
Sure.
So S
So
corporation.
kind of the summary, and I asked this question just so everybody knows, okay, is these are the types of business owners I run across constantly. And I've been coaching and consulting now over 10 years. I've been building companies for 33. Okay. And even when I owned 4 IT companies, I was still doing consulting for the small businesses. Some of these businesses, 25, $30 million a year. And it's amazing how they don't know why they're in the entity they're in
Mhm.
and the tax implications that exist. Like I got a client I'm referring to you later today, actually. Before you and I met, I was already in the middle of a complete working with somebody else to do a complete tax audit for the last 3 years and resubmit a bunch of amended returns.
Right.
When everything's said and done, the dude's overpaid his taxes by over $286,000 just
Yep.
because he did, and he's an escort. He did not even know he had his, and here's something that I want everybody to listen to what I'm about to say. Okay. It's not his fault. Okay. It's a lack of education, which is the number one thing I love about what you guys do is you educate the business owner. Okay.
Right.
Education is power when it comes to not getting, not getting taken advantage of and screwed by the IR and the S. Okay. Because if you think about it, people's favorite time of the year. Okay. Favorite time of the year is, between January, actually the end of January through May. Oh my God, I got a big refund. Oh my
Mhm.
God, man, my refund's $15,000. And it's like, how stupid is that? You know, you loan the IR and the S a $15,000 interest-free loan for a year. Okay.
Right.
When all had to do is had better tax planning and better tax strategy. And my rule of thumb is, man, if I get more than $500 back, I'm firing the tax guy. Okay. And then only if I didn't do what he told me to do.
Right. And I would say you're spot on in that sense that the education, like you, I work with people that, I mean, we're potentially working with a midwife, right? I know nothing about medical stuff. Like it's like I take stupid pills when you start talking to me about medical stuff. It's not my jam. And I'm not going to pretend to be anywhere near that. But when you're working with professionals, what they're going to do is they're going to help you frame what you need to understand in a very easily digestible way, and then help you take action on that. And then we work with really smart people that are successful in their business and their families and their lives. And I'm going to hand it to all the really smart people out there that are working hard in their business. They're savvy and they've already picked up on tax strategies, or they picked up on stuff. So you have to work with a professional that's not afraid to push back and say, you know, that's a great thing that you just told me. Let me help clarify. Let me help you understand, and then help you look at that just a little bit differently. And to your point at the very beginning, when you said, you know, we just at a birthday party for one of our best friends, you know, daughters, we had a 90-second 120-second conversation. You're like, wow, oh, that's an interesting way to look at that. That to revisit that, there's still pros and cons, right? So
and it all depends on the individual, depends on
their goals,
individual businesses, the overall picture, which is why I love, you know, when I take on a new client, one of the very first areas, one of the two key areas that I target right out of the gate is tax, okay, and referrals. Most business owners don't know how to grow their revenue, and they're sitting on 400 satisfied clients, and then they just continue to pour all this energy and effort and brain power and going out and getting that next client, when in reality, most businesses can triple their business if they just learn how to ask for referrals. That's number one. Number two is tax strategy. It's like people don't know, and this is huge. And everybody listening to my voice, okay? If you go to maketaxesfair.com, okay, and connect with these guys, and here's the deadline. You need to do this before you file 2023's return. Okay, you could do it now, okay, but definitely before you file 2023's return, you want to have these guys go back and look at 2022, 2020, or 2021, and 2020. Okay, because the moment you file 2023, you close that free audit, okay, on 2020. Okay, and I will go out of my way to guarantee this. Okay, I'm not asking you guys to do it, but I've seen it happen over and over again. The amount of returns that your current tax person has done since 2020, since doing your personal return, is probably into the thousands. He probably knows stuff now that he didn't know back then, but I guarantee you, I would have Chris and his team evaluate your returns and give you a second opinion on what's possible. Most likely, you're probably going to get some more money back.
One of my favorite stories is I was doing a consult with a gal, and you know, she was like, well, how much are you going to charge? So I told her, and she's like, oh, well, that's quite a bit more than my other guy. He's only charging me $800 a year. I said, well, respectfully, you're overpaying your taxes. I've identified $44,000 a year. So actually you're paying him $44,800 is what he's costing you.
Absolutely.
So I said, I know my value. I know what we bring to the table. Our process is we do a discovery with you and say, hey, let's go through and figure out what are the areas that you're missing and where can you be tuned up. If you're already, we do come across people that are running super efficiently, right? They're savvy. Again, there's a lot of savvy business owners out there that are doing things the right way. And if we can't substantially increase your tax savings, like, hey, there's like one thing that you're not doing. So let's just put you into we have a maintenance program where we just say, hey, we're going to help you proactively. One of the things we like to say is we do business on purpose. So where most CPAs, you do their taxes and then say, oh, okay, cool. And they schedule a time, maybe like talk about scheduling a time. With our clients in January, we pre-schedule the meetings, depending on where you're at in our service packages. We pre-schedule your meetings for the year in January so that you know, hey, in May and in August or September, and then at year end, you're going to be meeting with us on top of when we finish your tax return. So we do business on purpose, and that way we have those touch points scheduled in versus, what starts in ambiguity stays in ambiguity. So if we're ambiguous about it, it's not going to happen, because guess what? You get busy in your life. We get busy too. We're human and have lives and families. So let's be intentional about how we approach your tax savings and do business on purpose.
So let's do this, because I didn't expect to ad lib on. There's just some things that came to my heart here that I know go through the mind of a lot of small business owners, whether they're uneducated or whether highly educated. I run across this stuff all the time, and I wanted to make sure get that captured. So what I want to do now is I'm going to go through kind of a lightning round. Okay, I'm going to ask some very specific questions. Okay, we'll answer them real quick and give and be able to give the owners that are going to listen to this, or somebody that's looking to start their own business, some information that they could use ahead of time. So the importance of a tax strategy. Okay, why is having a solid tax strategy essential for small businesses?
You work super hard for your money, and at the end of the day, you can do better things with your money than the government can. So legitimately, you said at the beginning, big companies do big things and take advantage of loopholes. There's a lot of those that are also available. It's, the numbers are different, but at the end of the day, the same things that Amazon and, Trump and Pelosi and all these people, take advantage of on their taxes, you and I can as well. Just having the knowledge around it to say, oh, I can do that. Oh, I can
Knowledge
do
and
that.
education, right? Yeah.
Right.
Common tax mistakes. So what are some common tax mistakes that small business owners make?
The biggest one is putting your head in the sand and not dealing with it. And a friend of mine said, what gets inspected gets respected. And so, to be quite honest, spending a little bit of time, we have a guy where we've spent maybe 10 hours this year with him over the course of the year and shaved $26,000 off of his tax bill. That's a solid ROI on time to spend just a few hours a year, a few hours a month to optimize your taxes. So not paying attention to it until it's too late. Can't those who tried to bake a turkey, and defrost that sucker last minute, you see a lot of those oil fires when they try to deep fry. You can't defrost that turkey, right? And then put it in the deep fryer and expect it to not light your world on fire. So that's your tax bill if you don't be proactive about it.
Next question, tax planning. What are some key tax planning strategies that can benefit small business owners?
Legal structure is a pillar, right? Examining, and are you in the right legal structure, or does your legal structure need to be changed? Deduction optimization, looking and seeing where are there areas that you need to optimize. I met with a guy and he's like, Chris, I don't want to spend money on stuff. And I'm like, cool. How about your employees? He's all, yeah, I actually do want to reward them. I was going to give them a raise. So I said, cool. Instead of giving them a raise, why don't we look at some tax-free fringe benefits that you can provide to your employees that's actually going to cost you less because you don't have to pay payroll taxes on those. So we saved him. We gave him, in one session, we gave him almost $30,000 worth of fringe benefits that he could have given to he could before year end still give to his employees and implement for next year. And it's a clean $30,000 in tax write-off without the additional burden of payroll tax and workers' comp being added.
Yeah. Yeah, because a lot of people don't recognize, like, okay, if I give you a $300 gift card as an employee, right? And I got to run that through payroll. Not only do I have to pay 15.3% on that, but the employee has to pay 15.3% on that. And so you're talking about 30.6% just in federal tax on the gift.
So that $300 gift cost you almost $400.
Absolutely. Okay.
So, yeah.
Next question. Tax credits and deductions. What are some often overlooked tax credits and deductions that could significantly benefit small business owners?
Well, we hit on the one with the ADA credit, right? The disabled access tax credit. If you're hiring, if you're in the business of hiring people, the WOTC, Workers Opportunity Tax Credit. So you can get a tax credit for hiring people in a certain demographic. Convicted felon is one of those demographics. Long-term unemployment recipients, long-term public assistance recipients, also disabled veterans. So there's tax credits that can go along with hiring those people. And I've talked to employers and they're like, oh, shoot, I know I hired my brother and he's one of those categories. I'm like, yeah, you could have claimed up to, in that case, a $3,000 to $5,000 annual tax credit for the first 2 years that you hired him by putting him back to work.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and keep in mind, everybody, it's a tax credit, not a tax deduction.
Gotcha.
Okay.
Right.
So tax law changes. Tax laws and regulations can change frequently. How do you stay up to date with these changes, and how can small business owners adapt to them?
So I'm an enrolled agent and I have a requirement to do a minimum of 24 hours a year of continuing education. I do more than that. I think to date I'm at about 40 hours. So I'm almost double, what I'm required to do, because I'm always looking to be humble enough to know I don't know everything, and to say, is there something that we should be putting into place for our non-employees, but clients? So at the end of the day, just being aware. And so we have a tax strategy focus system that we push out to people. Starting in the new year, we're going to be pushing out a monthly newsletter free to the world. So I'm just going to do this, maketaxesfair.com/business doctor. And we're going to have that live. We'll put a link on there. It's not live yet, but maketaxesfair.com/business doctor if you want to sign up for that newsletter, free to the planet. And that's a method by which we communicate. And then we have an open office hour monthly where people can join us to ask questions about those tax strategies that we're pushing out, as well as open-ended, hey, you need help.
Got it. And so, so then monthly you do an open forum Q&A thing, right?
Mhm.
Called an open house, right? I'm assuming it's on Zoom because you got clients all over the place.
Right.
Okay. And how do people get access to that?
Through that maketaxesfair.com/business doctor. That's where people will sign up for that. And we have I did a web podcast appearance for somebody else, and we put that link on there with his last name, Demondan, if anybody wanted to check that out. But let's keep that to your crowd, if that makes sense.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Record keeping and documentation. What advice do you have for small business owners regarding proper record keeping and documentation to support their tax strategies?
The highest and best use of your time is not to be a bookkeeper. Fire yourself from that role. Fire yourself yesterday from that role. We have a gal who we've been talking to for 2 months. We could be saving her thousands of dollars in taxes. We're coming up on year end and she's still working on getting her books ready because she has not fired herself. So we can't move forward to help her save money on taxes because I don't have numbers. I don't know what I'm dealing with. I don't know because the advice that we're going to give to her, if she's at this level revenue wise versus this level revenue wise, net revenue, it's going to be different. There are tax strategies that are wildly inappropriate to implement if you're not at that level. So to fire yourself as that bookkeeper, we have some amazing people that we recommend for bookkeeping services. We don't do bookkeeping. We focus on the taxes, and we engage a professional that loves that stuff. Yep. They're weird. They love that stuff. We're weird. We love this stuff, right?
Yeah.
So fire.
Those were my exact thoughts, by the way, when you were like, man, I'm only required 25 hours, but I'm already at 45. I'm like, yeah, you're kind of weird, but you love taxes.
Yeah.
All right. Entity structure. How can the choice of business entity structure, we already kind of talked about this.
So
But where should somebody start? Should they come and talk to you as they exist, and you guys look at their overall picture and then say, hey, you really could benefit from this entity and you have somebody to refer them to, or what's the best way for a business owner to approach that?
exactly that. Like we do have some attorneys that are very affordable. They're more expensive than LegalZoom, but you're getting a live person, and they're typically about a third the cost of a local person. But if you're thinking about starting a business, my general advice is very rarely will I say, hey, run out and start an LLC right now, or run out and start a corporation right now. I say, get your business model proven, get it up and off the ground, make yourself a going concern. You know, unless you're out the gate, like with strong revenue projections and strong client base projections, you know, get your business running. You can always switch into an LLC or a corp after the fact. In most states, there's a cost to obviously forming the corporation, but then maintaining. And you know, there is a tipping point where an LLC or a corporation can make sense. I've changed my tune on this a little bit, but over the years. But at the end of the day, I still stand firm. You really need to get yourself organized and be open for business and say, hey, let's get stuff done.
Mm-hmm.
And then, oh yeah, we're profitable. We're making money. We're starting to turn a profit.
Yeah. Yeah.
And now we can form a corporation.
Yeah, and typically it's friends and relatives who've actually never owned a business that give that advice. You
Right.
know,
Right.
is when I run across, oh man, Joe's gonna start a business. Oh, you should form an LLC, and it's like he hasn't even picked a business name, URL, nothing, and it's
Let,
like,
let
so.
me back that up and say this. If you're a legal structure is a commitment,
Mhm.
and it's important for you to understand what it is that you're committing to when you form a corporation.
Yeah.
So a lot of people just run out, and there's a lot of TikTok tax advice. Oh, form this LLC and that feeds into this one, this one, this one. Like, cool. That may or may not be good advice.
Mhm. Yep.
Understand how the LLC impacts your life.
Yeah.
Understand both negatively and positively, because there's pros and cons. I mean, bald or having hair, right? There's pros and cons, right? I could invest in hair replacement loss, but there's pros and cons to that. So, you know, having an LLC, you need to understand, hey, how is that blessing my life? And how is that causing me some more work? Because that's the reality is having an LLC or corporation, there are requirements to maintain and to run that properly.
Yeah. So I'm holding in my hands here. I can't see it. Oh, there it goes. Boom. A corporate record book.
Right.
Okay. That's from a new client I've taken on, and they've been in business, I don't know, 13, 14 years. Okay. They incorporated about 7, 8 years ago. And part of what I do is I say, hey, I got to bring in people like Chris. I got to be bringing in people like Tyler. I got to bring in other expertise, people that have business expertise. And one of the things I am a master at is making sure that people get their crap done. And so I said, let me see your corporate record book. Well, the last time now this is 2023. Okay. The last time this corporate record book was updated was 2017. Okay. And it leads into my next question. Okay. Which is audits and tax controversies. What steps can small business owners take to minimize the risk of audits? And how should they handle tax controversies if they arise?
So keep your records straight, right? Whatever tax strategy you implement, make sure that you fully implement, that you do it the right way. And when you work with us, we say, here's what you should be doing. Here's what records you need to keep. So do that, right? Don't just say, oh, I'm good, or I'll handle that when I'm audited. I always tell people, because people ask this all the time, well, if I work with you guys, am I gonna get audited? Like, I don't know. Let me consult my crystal ball. Oh, I don't have one. The reality is the government system is on the move to expand budget increases, hiring employees, or they're retiring employees, they're replacing, upgrading technology. The reality is we're going to see audits increase in the future. So the only thing you can do is, one, act with integrity.
Sure.
So again, just because the government lies, cheats, and steals doesn't mean we should. Do things the right way the first time, document it, and then if you get audited, say, well, Uncle Sam, here's my records, suck it. I mean, I've done it the right way. So have a nice day. Goodbye. When you go through an audit, and I've represented several clients in almost 20 years in audits, we've come out clean. When they're my clients, we've come out clean every time because we've done it the right way. We had the documentation that we had, and we're able to justify our stance. There's a lot less gray in the tax code than people think. When people say, oh, that's a gray area, I'm like, yeah, that means you're working with somebody who doesn't understand the rules, because there's
bingo,
here's what's allowed and here's what's not allowed. And there are strategies that are untested in the court systems.
Sure.
And there are untested strategies, but it's a lot less gray than you think there is.
Yeah. It's either they like to use the term gray area. Oh man, that's a red flag.
Yeah.
And really what it means is I don't know enough about that to give you the advice, and I'm not willing to stand on that. And at the end of the day, tax code says this. It says I can do this. It says this is a requirement for this, and you have to document it. And as long as you have all those pieces checked, who gives a rip if you do an audit? Now, let me ask you this question, because I really want to give an updated answer to this. Let's just say I get an audit, okay? And they're auditing these 2 line items, and I pass with flying colors, okay? Can they, it's my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, okay, that for the next couple of years, they can't audit those line items again.
Technically, to go back to those years, they can look at the new year. It's my understanding they can say, hey, if you're audited for 2022, they could come back and audit the 2023, 2024, like, because it's a new year, it's fresh numbers.
Sure.
New income, new revenue, new expenses. Can they, the importance of coming to an audit prepared, because you're right, if they typically audits are, hey, we want to question these line items, that's very rarely that it's a blanket your entire business. So get your records to the point where you have the receipts and everything in line. You show up and you're prepared, because if you're not prepared, then they can sit there and say, well, these things, but then they can also say, well, what about this and this and this? And I've been in an audit where the client wasn't prepared. Wasn't my client. I didn't do the taxes. It was somebody else that I helped him. And we were sitting there and the auditor was like, well, I'm looking at the tax return now and I'm seeing these things. So I'm going to open up those items as well, since you don't have this, and you need to come next time prepared with these things. So
absolutely, they dig deeper, man.
They dig deeper. If you're not able to show them that you're spot on and you've got those things that they're questioning dialed in and the proof of those, then yeah.
Well, great time, guys. I really appreciate your time. And so again, how you can connect with Chris Middleton and Tyler Buechler is go to maketaxesfair.com/business doctor. Okay. And definitely you want to take advantage of the fact that we got a month and 1 week left. If you haven't sat down with someone, highly recommend you reach out to these guys. The other thing is, I forgot to mention in the last question, is you can have all your taxes done great. Okay. Everything can be, all the I's can be dotted, the T's can be crossed. If you don't update your corporate record stuff, okay, doesn't matter how great those taxes are done, they can rip you apart. So you need to make sure that you do that. And a lot of businesses are get lazy about that type of stuff. So take advantage of what these guys are talking about. And it costs nothing to have a conversation with them at this point. Short conversation. Okay. But reach out to maketaxesfair.com /business doctor and connect with these guys before the end of the year. So go out and make it happen, everybody. It's a great call. We went a lot longer than what I expected, but this is such an important foundational subject for all businesses, because we all go out, we bust our butt to make all this money and get all these clients and do all this stuff. just to have the IR and the S come and literally they could shut you down.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
And unfortunately everything you built all these years, you know, so don't let that happen to you. Knowledge is power, and that's one thing I like about you guys is you guys educate.
Knowledge,
And
knowledge is power, but knowledge applied,
applied.
that is
Boom.
real power. So I agree.
Bingo.
Knowledge applied and put into action. I've got to jump to another meeting because it is
Same
that
here.
time of year.
Have a
And
great one, guys.
thank you.
All
Appreciate
right.
it.
You
Appreciate
bet.
it very much. Thank
Bye.
you.